The Bible only recounts 3 years of Jesus' 33-year life. What about the remaining 30 years? A papyrus discovered in Egypt in 2019 contains shocking details about those lost years. And who read it? A 4-year-old child who didn't know Aramaic and couldn't read or write. When Jesus was 12, he healed a child. But they didn't tell anyone because they were afraid. Was Matteo telling the stories that the Bible silenced? Guadalajara, Mexico, 2017. Elena Hernandez was worried when her son Matteo didn't speak at age 2. Doctors diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder. Matteo communicated with symbols instead of words. He drew strange, angular signs that no one recognized. Elena thought maybe he has artistic talent. But in March 2019, everything changed. Matteo turned 4, and one morning, he was sitting at the breakfast table, drawing something on a napkin. Elena looked. They weren't symbols anymore. They were words. But in what language? Elena took a photo and uploaded it to Google Lens. Result: it could be Old Aramaic. Her heart began to race. Where could her son have learned Aramaic? They didn't even have a Bible at home. They weren't a religious family. March 15, 2019, Cairo, Egypt. Elena was a history professor. She taught at the University of Guadalajara. That year, she went to Egypt for a conference, and she took Matteo with her. They visited the National Archaeological Museum. Matteo was quiet. As usual, he wasn't even looking around. But then, when they entered the ancient inscriptions hall, Matteo started running. Elena was shocked. Matteo never ran. He was afraid of crowds. But now he was running toward a glass display case. Inside was an ancient papyrus. It had been found 6 months ago in the ruins of a Coptic monastery near Hamadi. Date: around 380 AD. No one had been able to decipher it. Matteo pressed his hand against the glass display case and started shouting, "Jesus' friend! Jesus' friend is here!" The museum attendant approached. "Please calm your child down." But Matteo wouldn't stop. Jesus' secret friend Eliezer? It says so here. Here, a crowd began to form. Dr. Rashid Almasri was the head of the museum's papyrology department. He had been studying ancient texts for 30 years. He had been studying that papyrus for 6 months. He hadn't been able to decipher anything. 60% Aramaic, 30% Coptic, 10% unknown symbols. He heard the noise and came over. He saw Matteo, a small child, pressed against the glass display case, crying. "What's going on here?" he asked. Elena said, "I'm sorry, my son is autistic. He sometimes reacts like this." But Matteo turned and looked at Dr. Almasri. "Why can't you read it? It's very easy." Tobias wrote it. 53 years after Jesus, Dr. Almasri's knees buckled. The name Tobias, he had never read that name anywhere. But there was a signature in the lower corner of the papyrus, indistinct, faint, almost invisible, and there were the symbols. It really could have been Tobias. The child. How old is the child? 4, Elena said, trembling. And does he know Aramaic? No, he knows nothing. He hasn't even learned to read and write yet. Dr. Almasri crouched down. He looked into Matteo's eyes. "My son." "What does this papyrus say?" Matteo's eyes filled with tears. Jesus' childhood. Tobias saw everything. When Jesus was 6 years old, he healed a sick child. But people were afraid. That's why no one wrote about it. Dr. Almasri took the greatest risk of his career. He took the papyrus to his private research room. and he called Matteo. The room was lit with white lights. The papyrus lay on a padded table. Matteo approached. He didn't touch it. He just looked at it, and he began to speak. Tobias wrote this papyrus. He was Eliezer's older brother. Eliezer was a sick child. He couldn't walk. He was 6 years old. Dr. Almasri was taking notes. His hands were shaking. Jesus lived in Nazareth. He was 6 years old. One day he met Eliezer. The other children were mocking Eliezer. But Jesus did not. Matteo lifted his finger to a specific place on the papyrus. Right here, Yeshua said to him, "Don't be sad, Eliezer. God loves you." And then a miracle happened. Ink dripped from Dr. Almasri's pen. What miracle? Jesus made clay birds. He wet them with water. He blew on them, and the birds flew like real birds. Eliezer laughed for the first time that day. That story, it wasn't in the Bible, but it was in an apocryphal text called The Infancy Gospel of Thomas, a text from the 2nd century. Almasri asked in astonishment, "Child, where did you learn this story?" Matteo smiled, "Because the letters speak to me. I can hear them." When the papyrus was fully translated, something shocking emerged. A location description. Tobias had written, "Jesus entrusted me with a secret. He left 3 testimonies, one in the north of Sinai, in the heart-shaped room in the shadow of the wonderful mountain, the second under the water where he walked. The third in the soil where his blood was shed." Matteo pointed to a drawing on the edge of the papyrus. Here's the map. The first cave is here, a drawing of a mountain. 3 olive trees, a heart-shaped mark. Drive. Almasri compared the map with geographical coordinates. The Sinai Peninsula, 0.40 kilometers north of Hamadi, March 21, 2019. A team assembled. Dr. Almasri. Dr. Samira Najib, Oxford, linguist. Elena Hernandez and Matteo, they walked for 6 hours in the desert. Matteo didn't seem tired. He walked as if he knew the way. "Mom, we're almost there. There are 3 trees. You'll see them." And 20 minutes later, they really saw 3 olive trees. They formed a perfect triangle. Matteo pointed to a rock. "Here, there's an entrance underneath." They dug for 3 hours. And they found it, a narrow cave entrance. Inside, there were natural limestone walls. And at the very back, a heart-shaped carved room. In the middle, a stone table. On it, a small chest, wrapped in linen. Dr. Najib opened the chest. Inside was a papyrus scroll. Matteo looked and whispered, "These are Jesus' own words, written in his own hand." The papyrus was examined in the lab, carbon-14 test, AD 3235. Exactly the period when Jesus lived. Dr. Najib translated, "I, Yeshua, son of Joseph, write these words at the age of 30. I know my time is short, but I do not wish to hide the truth. As a child, I performed miracles, but I was afraid. The rabbis looked at me with suspicion. My father Joseph said, 'My son, your power is for love, not for fear.' I healed a child. His name was Eliezer. I made birds out of clay for him. I blew on them, and they flew. That day I understood. God's power is not a game. It is a responsibility." Matteo listened and cried. Jesus was so lonely. No one understood him. The news spread around the world. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera. 4-year-old child finds text written by Jesus himself. And the Vatican. The Vatican remains silent. 3 days later, an emergency meeting of cardinals was called. It lasted 7 hours. Only 3 sentences were given to the press. We are investigating the situation. The community must be patient. Some truths come out over time. But whispers circulated behind the scenes. This text contradicts the Bible. Childhood miracles are contrary to official doctrine. If this is true, we will have to change 2,000 years of narrative. The papyrus read, "The second testimony, under the water where I walked. The Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on water." May 2019, the diving team went to the coordinates Matteo described. 25 meters deep, and there, a stone chest, sealed ... inside, a second papyrus. People saw my miracles, but they did not understand them. I did not turn water into wine to show off my power. I did it to bring joy to a mother. I did not raise the dead to gain fame. I did it to wipe away a father's tears. The miracle is love, not a display of power. The third papyrus was found in Jerusalem, directly beneath Golgotha Hill. It contained Jesus' final words. "Tomorrow I will die, but I am not afraid, because death is not the end. Death is a door. Love transcends death. And I promise you, where I am going, you will come too. God's kingdom is not in heaven. It is within every heart." Matteo is now 9 years old. He can no longer read the papyri. His memories have faded. Helena asked him, "Matteo, do you remember Jesus?" Matteo thought, "No, but I still hear his voice, in my dreams. He tells me, 'Don't be afraid.'" The 3 papyri are now on display in a special museum in Jerusalem. Millions of people have visited. In 2023, the Vatican made an official statement. These texts are authentic. They provide additional information to the Bible. However, they do not change our official doctrine. But the world has changed. People are now asking different questions. What happened in Jesus' childhood? What did we lose in the Bible? Where is God's kingdom really? And Matteo Hernandez. He was just a 4-year-old child, but he reminded the world of a forgotten truth. Some stories are so sacred that they are buried in silence, but the truth comes out sooner or later.